Good. It's a great pleasure to welcome everyone to our second Zoom regarding my new book, Survival of the Fit. In our last webinar, we introduced the concept of physical identity and how we were born with the need to be outside and explore nature. Unfortunately, in the 21st century, many children have their physical identity weaned out of them due to multiple factors. It is my contention that the best way to keep children active and thus cure the obesity crisis is never let them lose their physical identity. The easiest way to do this is the proper physical education program in our public schools. This webinar will give an outline of chapters 2 and chapter 3. Please send in your questions after the slides, we'll have time for discussion, and we'll still get you out of here in a half an hour at home, making those preparations for the intimate Thanksgiving supper that we're all having. So these are some of the topics we're going to touch on. In chapters 2 and 3, I will make the case that the world is different than when most of us were in school due to a number of factors. The most important and obvious is what we are doing right now, the computer culture. We can adapt to a certain amount of change. I hated the seatbelt alarm. I wanted the mechanic to turn it off, but now I'm fine with it. That's a tolerable aspect of the tech revolution. Much of it, however, has moved too fast for the vast majority of human brains. On the other hand, our PE programs have not nearly kept up with the computer revolution. The world has changed. These are just a few things that we no longer do in 2020 that we did when I was a kid. No doubt you're all thinking of dozens of other things you can add to this list. But this leaves us starting each day with what I call the 200 calorie surplus. In other words, we burned 200 calories a day 50 years ago with what we call in the medical business activities of daily living. We didn't have to think about it, just going about our daily business burned calories. The world has changed. The majority of children today are getting no organic activity unless they live on a farm. They will only create their own activities if they have not lost their physical identity. So all this is to say, it is time to stop thinking of ourselves as these tough, pioneer, grizzled Yankee types. America leads the world in adult obesity, in pediatric obesity, and in pediatric inactivity. We're just not as tough as we think. Thus, the American Association of Pediatricians recommends 2 hours or less of sedentary screen time each day. Furthermore, screen time and psychological well-being are directly related. Very simply, more screen time, more mental health issues. And again, you'll see this theme again and again and again. Screen time, video time, not being outside. This is not only associated with physical issues, but with mental health issues. The world might have changed, but we haven't. We still have the brains of the hunter-gatherers we were 200,000 years ago. We literally crave nature, as any 2-year-old will tell you, and our brains respond to it in a powerful way. As good as video games get, they cannot approach the feedback our brains receive from nature, yet we are denying ourselves. Which brings us to the next topic. Why are kids not getting outside? Well, there are a number of reasons for not getting outside. Control for sure is one of them, though most parents say they want their children playing outside. They don't make it easy despite having great memories themselves. Back in the day, and I see those eye roll, parents didn't seem to particularly care what kids did as long as A, they were not bugging them, B, they came home with the same number of limbs and that they left the house with, and C, they did not have a police escort. Now there seems to be a level of distrust on the part of adults that children cannot play without some sort of issue. With organized sports, however, adults are in control. Another reason children do not play outside is fear, whether that fear is real or perceived. Patty and I ran the numbers using data from the United States, and we calculated a few years ago that when Sam was a boy, he would have had to sit outside on the corner for over 800,000 hours before being abducted. This same fear has to do with Mother Nature on some level, especially here in New Hampshire. The last time someone was killed by a bear, however, was 1734, And I suspect that was Wilderness Myth. But whether real or perceived, the safety concerns, especially of low-income families in predominantly urban and rural areas, provide all the more reason to build strong, innovative PE programs in our schools that get the students outside whenever possible. Regarding entertainment, my father's idea of entertaining us was to give us a piece of sandpaper to work on that old chair that he wanted to refinish. Now, I have no data to support this, but I believe many parents today are more fun to be around than their child's friends, who often just want to play video games. So as Bill Maher would say, I don't know this for a fact, I just know it's true. Video killed the radio star, and adults and money killed children's play. From the time adults took over interscholastic competition, to the loss of community club teams, to the rise of national youth sports organizations, to the building of enormous public school football stadiums, to the race for college scholarships, to the selling of TV rights for high school games, adults and money, not health and fun, has worked itself front and center. And these adults with their money brought organization to the point where today, organized sports are actually one of the main culprits in the obesity crisis. One reason kids don't play outside on their own is there's no one there to blow the whistle, no one there to watch, no one there to clap. The children forget it is their game because adults have made it so much about adults. The suburbs were the biggest influence on the growth of organized activities since the population explosion due to immigration in the early 1900s. The suburbs were a perfect breeding ground for youth sports, a wealthy post-war economy, a generation looking for escape from years of war, green playing fields, and a baby boom. This historic change continues today as the majority of organized sports participants are boys and girls from the suburbs. Clearly, parents thought they were doing something good for their kids, but they were pushed in questionable ways by the sports industrial complex and, oh yeah, the rise of television. ESPN, ring a bell? Organized sports have morphed into something that is now a negative for the health of a big part of our population. A quick aside, one of the greatest myths of organized sports is that it provides character. Well, do sports build more character than working at Burger King or being in the outdoor club or playing in an orchestra? All these activities require cooperation and teamwork, and I suspect build the same amount of character. One of the major issues with organized sports is that it is turned into an arms race, and many children, due to poverty and location, are left out. It takes money to play on travel teams. It takes money to obtain gym memberships and to get ice and snow time. Thus, the rich keep getting richer. Two important points. Number one, unless you play organized sports with its often substantial price tag, you will probably not start on your public high school team. And number two, 75% of kids drop out of organized sports by the age of 15 because of the reasons that we've noted. But at this day and age, when they drop out of organized sports, when they go home, they don't go and ride their bikes, they don't go and play in the woods or pick up games on their own. They sit on the couch with a video console in their hands and a big bowl of potato chips within reach. Finally, regarding organized sports, if we accept these sports are crucial to a child's development, why are we not insisting that everyone participate in them? It needs to be physical education first and school sports second. So this is what we need. We need high energy activities for every child, every day in every school, and parents pick up the slack the rest of the time. PE is the baseline, and not just any PE, high energy, fun PE, taught by a high energy PE teacher. My plan for this PE is cost neutral. In addition to another PE teacher and added expenses to make the plan work with the use of teaching assistants and a statewide PE czar to help with the myriad issues, but most importantly, making sure the students at every school are getting the physical education they deserve. I'm going to break down these numbers in the following webinar in January, so I don't want you to miss that. In sum, The public education system has conflated academics with organized sports to the detriment of our children's health. And there is also a doctor issue. Doctors should be considering exercise report cards following the amount and type of exercise for all of our patients, not just children. Physical education needs a rebranding. Silicon Valley has managed to sell unhealthy, addictive products, including food products, to our children. Let's make them help us sell something positive. Why don't we sell motion class or fast time as the favorite part of the day for every child, not something to dread, but something to help maintain their physical identity and, importantly, improve their academics. So thank you so much for coming and listening. Yes, we are going to break down the numbers. Next time we'll go fast, but the other thing we're going to break down next time is what you can do, what we can do as a society, as doctors, as PE teachers, as classroom teachers, as PTA members, as superintendents, what we can all do to make this happen for this next generation of our youth. So in conclusion, the world has changed. Get used to it. If you're over 40, you probably don't understand how incredibly addicted our children are to ultra-processed foods and, more importantly, the two-screened entertainment. Children do not play outside, but they should. It's in their genetics. They will have less physical issues and less mental and emotional issues by getting outside more. Number 3, adults and money have tainted play. Shame on us. Number 4, organized sports are part of the problem, not part of the solution. And finally, public school physical education is our only hope. Thank you so much. I'd love to answer some questions or hear some of your comments. Here are the links. Please send me an email if you don't get a question answered. And I would love to have a conversation and go to our survivalofthefit.net website for more videos and content. And of course, you can pre-purchase the book there.
Is PE dying as a major in colleges?
Yeah, so it's funny, I don't know about teaching. I think teaching in general is on the wane a bit, you know, for obvious reasons, for anybody who's paid attention to the news in the last couple of years and all the protests and struggles for the average teacher. But physical education absolutely is on a downward trend for a lot of reasons. And sadly, most of us know the one reason. The PE teacher, who should be the linchpin of the school, who should be the first violin of the school, does not get the respect. And as of 2002, with No Child Left Behind, their time was cut. The average budget for a PE teacher is in the hundreds of dollars. It's just, it's not a career that is getting the respect it deserves, although it gets, these kids are so well educated. A lot of PE teachers are going into other fields, going into administration and other things after getting frustrated with PE.
Why did schools, when they did, eliminate PE or cut it back?
So the evolution of PE is very interesting, and Rebecca Noel, who's a professor here at Plymouth State University, talks a little bit about that in one of my 5 to Survive interviews on the website. But we started back in the day with PE being hygiene, but in 1866, California mandated 2 PE sessions a day for their students. And you know, these kids were not on video games at the end of the day. So people have understood the importance of activity, you know, physical education being a little bit of a takeoff on that general activity. but it's devolved over the years with adults getting involved. But the really big move was into the sports. And although in the elementary years, the teaching, the teachers and the principals have managed to hold on to some aspect of physical education, as many of you know, by the time they get to high school, the kids take at best 2 PE classes for 2 years of high school, or something to that effect on average in the United States. It's very little. The only state that mandates PE for every kid, every day, every year is Illinois, and they admit that they do not achieve that. While the vast minority of students in Illinois are getting PE every day, the vast majority, particularly in the inner cities and stuff, are simply not. But at least they're aspiring to do that. But there's been so many, we go over it in the book in some detail. There's just been so many factors, but it really, it's the will of our educators that have let it lapse.
There's a huge craze for Fitbits and Apple Watches and things that keep your heart rate in front of your face. How do they play into this?
Yeah. So kids love technology. And although I talk in the book about I'm a minimalist and I'm not crazy about technology, the bottom line is kids love it. My issue with technology, whether it's an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or a heart rate monitor or anything, is number one, I don't want it to be a limitation for anybody. I don't have my Apple Watch, so I'm not going to do anything today because I'm not going to get credit for it, or that child is not motivated to do something. But I also worry about, even with the little electronics that they have in some of the school gym classes, I don't want that stuff to break, because if it breaks, then things change. So I don't want any excuses. So if we have access to heart rate monitors and Apple Watches, great. If we don't, you can still get it done. So my chemistry professor said you need a bench, you need a few chemicals, and you need imagination. And that's what we need in physical education classes. That said, for most of you out there, if that Apple Watch is motivating you even a little bit, that's brilliant. By the way, 10,000 steps is about 5 miles. As a hunter-gatherer, and guess what? You're all hunter-gatherers out there. We should be doing between 9 and 15 miles a day. So sorry to break news to you, but we should be aiming closer to 20,000 steps. And I know that's a lot, but anything to motivate you, anything to motivate your kid, I'm in favor of. I just don't want to lose anybody. I don't want to miss anybody.
Big school, small school, urban school, rural school, who's doing it best?
Yeah, big school, small school, urban school, rural school. It's the suburban schools that are doing it best. And but again, it's the rich schools that are doing it best. It's all about the money. And those of you from New Hampshire, I stopped listening to the arguments about school funding years ago because we were going nowhere as a state. But guess what? We have property taxes that fund our schools, and guess which schools are the nicest? The schools in the rich property tax areas. Guess which schools are struggling? Claremont, who brought the lawsuit, and the poor schools. And that to me is horrifying. In our own state, in my own state, that a kid, 20 miles down the road is going to get a different education and different experience than a kid 20 miles up the road. That's horrifying. But we know that's what's happening across the United States. And shame on us. One of the things I have in the book is a snippet of something that, some legislation that was brought up during the Obama administration, and it said something to the effect that every child should be entitled to an education. That's in the 21st century. They were putting in legislation saying that every child in America is entitled to a good education. I thought we did that, in 1776. So the rich keep getting richer, and we've got to stop that, because you're paying for the poor kids on the other end. You're paying for the poor kids in their diabetic costs, in their blood pressure costs, in their obesity costs. You're paying for the poor kids because they're not able to get jobs, because they're not learning anything in school, because they're not fit enough to learn anything in school. So it's costing us money. Why don't we give the money to those poor schools? Now we've got a bunch of healthy, smart, active, happy kids that can contribute to society, so we don't have to pay for them on the other end.
You talk about 200 calories lost. What are things that people would do today? I mean, you have remote controls, but are there other things that have been developed?
Everything. Everything's right. You don't crank down your car window. You don't shift your gears. You don't close the back door in your car, for God's sakes. We don't do anything anymore. Everything is remote control. We don't pull a lever to drop the seat back. And I'm focused here on cars right now. But obviously we don't stand there on the telephone anymore. We don't have to get up and answer the telephone. A laundry is a different world. Go to Dunkin' Donuts some morning. Again, even if it was 2019, go to Dunkin' Donuts, or don't go to Dunkin' Donuts. But at Dunkin' Donuts, what does it look like in the morning? 10 cars online, nobody's in the store buying a donut. You just sit in your car. It goes on, and it's insidious how this has worked. And again, I want you people in New Jersey to start pumping your own gas. That's what you can do to burn some calories. But all we do is pump our own gas, aside from my Jersey folks. And that's the only extra exercise we get. And it is absolutely remarkable. Bringing your curtains up and down, or whatever it is, heating up your bed. You don't go to bed and shiver for 5 minutes while you're heating it up. And again, I apologize to the Floridians out there, but you don't even do that for 5 minutes. We have electric blankets. They'll heat up the bed for us. It's absolutely remarkable what we don't do. And all of these things have a calorie count attached to them. And it's, 1 calorie here, 5 calories there, but it adds up, and it adds up to weight at the end of the year. And then it adds up to weight at the age of 40. But the kids today are going to have all that weight with weak bones and with no muscles, because they are doing nothing. At least those of you over 50 did a lot of these things. You have some bone structure, you have some muscles, even though you might be overweight. But the kids today are not getting that benefit.
From a PE teacher, kids need more PE. 20 years ago, it was 4 times a week. Now it's 2. But can organized sports be an addition for the kids who want more physical activity?
Absolutely. So my point is, organized sports is in addition to. Our baseline is, and by the way, California instituted 2 PE sections in 1866, 2 activity sessions a day for their school children every day. 1866. You don't think these kids in 1866 were walking to school or doing chores on the farm? But they knew the importance of it. The Greeks and the Romans knew the importance of the mind-body connection. So, right, PE has gotten screwed over the years. We keep educating these brilliant PE people. And again, I have a section in the book where I talk about what the PE teachers are learning in school. They come out of school with incredible knowledge, but then they don't get to use it. And they get whittled into this little hole in the school hierarchy. And that's something else that we have to fight against. The PE teacher is the first violinist in the school. The PE teacher is the linchpin in the school. Nothing can happen. There is no STEM without fitness. Nothing can happen without fitness, without PE. And we've got to learn that. Otherwise we're just never going to make progress. And the PE teachers have to fight. And I hope every PE teacher, and there are 200,000 of you out there in America alone, the PE teachers have to fight for their territory. And then that's going to be just part of this revolution.
Are you saying that organized sports need to go away?
So for sure, organized sports have morphed into something that we didn't plan on having. 100 years ago, kids were getting plenty of exercise. Some of the kids were working in factories, kids were delivering groceries, kids were working on farms. If they didn't get activity in school, they would go home and they would work, and they would also go home and play. And they would play pickup games, and they would do things on their own. And that is just not happening today. Organized sports belongs in the community, because organized sports is only involving 20 or so % of kids today. So the majority are 75 and 80% of the kids, and I use 80 and 20 just because that's what people remember. But this is really a perfect example of the 80-20 rule. 20% are playing organized sports. Our high schools and our schools have turned into minor leagues for colleges. And colleges have turned into minor leagues for pros. Our job as educators, our job in the public school system is to have kids ready to play sports. And 80% of our kids are not ready to play sports. They're sick and unhealthy because they're not keeping their physical identity.
Patty did, whether we can make blue zones, and what are blue zones?
So one of the things that a lot of you were asking appropriately is the connection with food. And this idea of blue zones, and for those of you who don't know about blue zones, there are 5 blue zones, I think, in the world. Costa Rica, Sardinia, Loma Linda, California, a couple of others. And these people have a longer lifespan than other people. And again, we're talking about a big chunk of people. So it's not just one family or one household. We're talking about a community. And they found with these communities that they have a healthy lifestyle on multiple levels. And those multiple levels are societal, are having contact with their friends and neighbors and family, and the other big part is they have better diets, and a lot of them are following these Mediterranean diets and other such things. And in Costa Rica they call it pura vida, this pure life. And what's happened in these blue zones is that these people have been contaminated by their friends and neighbors and politics of the blue zone. That pura vida they take throughout their life. They take it in the sense of activity, they take it in the sense of food, they take it in the sense of communication, they take it in the sense of being outdoors. And so it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, if we have pura vida, and if we believe in this mind-body connection, can that continue? And the answer is absolutely it can. And that's a good question. Can we make more blue zones? That certainly would be a goal. I've never heard of anybody trying to establish it. All these scientists want to study the blue zones, but why can't we establish a blue zone in central New Hampshire or in Amarillo, Texas? Yeah.
In 1950s, Catholic schools in New Jersey had a 15-minute warm-up from the front entrance before anyone was allowed into the school. How can schools get involved in not purely physical education, but just other movement?
Yeah, that's perfect, and we do talk about that in the book. Every school should be open for business at least 15 minutes before classes start, and we want those kids running around. We want them getting their heart rates up. We want them breathing hard. We want them sweating. Again, whether that's outside in the schoolyard, whether that's in the parking lot, whether that's in the gymnasium, whether that's in the cafeteria, wherever we can get those kids moving. And whether you have to throw out some balls to get them moving, or have somebody kind of revving up the troops, whatever it is to get those kids going is brilliant. And what happens is then they go to first period and they are ready to learn. Then ideally 2 hours later is gym class, and they get out in gym class and they crank up their metabolism again. And then they go back to their next classes ready to learn. Then they go to lunch, and then they have recess, and then they're cranked up, and then they go to their last classes ready to learn. And then what we haven't talked about, and I think I used the word once in the book, is intramurals. Intramurals seem to have gone the wayside because of organized sports. But the answer is that we crank up the heart and we crank up the brain. We're warming up the heart, we're warming up the lungs, we're warming up the muscles, and we're warming up the brain. And now the brain is ready to learn. If you are taking a big test tomorrow, you want to get out and you want to go for a quick walk in this nice cool air that we have now in the Northeast, and to get you ready and get your brain ready. If you have that chess match, like our friend in Queen's Gambit, she should be getting out and doing a quick walk before a chess match, or doing some push-ups or sit-ups. So it's a direct relationship. So yeah, that's what schools should be doing. And you know what? If we have to resurface the gym floor every year, what a great problem to have.
Obviously, diet is important. Should the PE czar be involved with the school lunch program as well?
I think everybody should be involved in the school lunch program. And I talk about the sports industrial complex, but the food industrial complex, we know, is huge and is so strong. And it was, Michelle Obama worked hard to try to get us revved up for that, and that's gotten beaten down in the last 4 years. And the old, Ronald Reagan administration, where ketchup was deemed a vegetable. This is all directly from that food industrial complex, and it is incredibly hard thing to fight. But so is the sports industrial complex, and so is the complex that we have that we don't understand, or we're not admitting that our brains and our bodies are directly connected. And if we don't have fitness, we don't have anything. We don't have STEM. We don't have art. We don't have music. I don't know this for a fact, but I know this is true. I know that Yo-Yo Ma was not overweight, did not have diabetes. You cannot be a Yo-Yo Ma and not have some kind of fitness, because his brain cannot work without, and to the level that it's working, without fitness. Steve Jobs had a certain level of fitness. These are all connected. And if the more we can get the food as part of that, clearly the easier it's going to be to get our kids fit. One more question?
Yeah, it would be interesting for a 20-something-year-old to give their opinion on whether or not organized sports should be moved from the high school responsibility to the community responsibility.
Well, I'll tell you what the 20-year-old will say. If the 20-year-old was one of the 20%, as I was, and as a lot of you guys are, the people that are listening, then it worked for you. It worked for me. I liked sports. I wasn't particularly good at them, but I participated, and it worked for me. And I didn't realize back in high school that I was on the largesse of the suburban school district that I was growing up in, but I was lucky. But 20 years ago, or I'm sorry, 50 years ago, there were no video games. So the kids that weren't going, when I wasn't going to playing ball after school, I was going and playing ball with my friends after school. We were doing something. But we were always doing something. So even if we weren't doing organized sports, we were doing something. But the kids today are not, if they're not in organized sports, they are playing video games. They are addicted to the video games. So that's what they're doing after school. And that's the difference between now and 50 years ago. And with all due respect to you, to my 20-year-old, if the system worked for you, that's great. But the system is not working for the majority of kids. And unless these kids are intrinsically motivated to go out, the whole snowboarding and extreme sports were kids that were breaking away from the football and the soccer and the field hockey. Those kids had physical identities and they're doing fine, but those kids are old now. Those are you. But now the kids today, the extreme sports are extreme video games. And that's not getting the job done for their health. So I want to thank everybody and anybody, please send me, again, your comments and your suggestions and your ways to make this stronger. And most importantly, tell me ways that we can get the revolution going, because this revolution is absolutely necessary, and we can piggyback and they can piggyback on the food revolution. But this generation of children is going to have a shorter lifespan than our generation. And if we don't do something, this next generation of children will similarly have a shorter lifespan. So thank you again. Happy Thanksgiving. Have a great and safe time on Thursday, and we'll hopefully see you for the next webinar.